George Orwell's 1984 paints a picture of a society where privacy simply doesn't exist. The ruling party monitors every action, word, and even facial expression of its citizens. We experience this through Winston Smith, a frail 39-year-old man trudging up the stairs of a decaying apartment complex. At every landing, he is greeted by an enormous poster of a face, captioned with the warning, "Big Brother is watching you." Inside his apartment, a telescreen blares party propaganda. These devices never turn off, and worse, they transmit both ways. The thought police use them to constantly monitor the population for any sign of disloyalty. Winston actually works for the party's propaganda arm, the Ministry of Truth. If we look at this official record, you can see exactly how they control reality. The name of an executed official, Comrade Withers, is completely crossed out and seamlessly replaced by a fabricated loyal hero named Comrade Ogilvy. The original person ceases to exist. The party goes even further than rewriting history. They are actively shrinking the English language into a new form called Newspeak. By eliminating words capable of expressing independent thought, they are making the very concept of rebellion literally impossible to think. Knowing all of this, Winston makes a fatal decision. He buys a blank diary and writes, "Down with Big Brother," repeatedly on its pages. This is thought crime, an act that carries an inevitable death sentence. He can no longer stomach a society that actively destroys human connection. The party eradicates physical intimacy and trains children to act as spies, monitoring and reporting their own parents to the authorities. In Winston's mind, the only viable path to revolution lies with the proles. They make up the massive, impoverished working class, and they are the only demographic with the sheer numbers required to overpower the state. Desperate for a physical connection to the world before the party, Winston visits a second-hand store in the prole district. There, an old man named Mr. Charrington sells him a contraband item, a piece of coral embedded in glass. It is a useless, beautiful relic of a forbidden past. But on his way home, he spots a dark-haired woman from his office following him. Panic sets in. He is immediately convinced she is an agent for the thought police, sent to catch him in the act. Winston accepts that his capture is now just a matter of time. Seeing himself as a dead man walking, he pins his last shred of hope on an inner party official named O'Brien. A man he suspects, based entirely on a dream, harbors secret rebel sympathies. At work, the dark-haired girl trips and falls near Winston. When he helps her up, she slips a folded piece of paper into his hand. It doesn't contain a threat. It simply says, "I love you." Her name is Julia. They arrange a complex journey into the countryside, far from the telescreens, to consummate their affair. Winston views this physical act as a direct political strike against the party's rigid puritanism. To continue meeting, they take a massive risk. They rent the room directly above Mr. Charrington's antique shop, building a hidden haven where they can exist as individuals. In this room, they begin to explore pieces of the forgotten past. They learn fragments of an old nursery rhyme about St. Clement's Church, a structure from before the Revolution that has long since been erased from public memory. Later on, O'Brien even helps Winston complete this lost piece of history by supplying the missing verses regarding the bells of St. Martin's. But outside their window, the city is boiling over with violent preparations for Hate Week. The contrast is sharp. Winston and Julia are building a fragile, quiet isolation, while the rest of Oceania descends into a mandated, militaristic frenzy. The rebellion finally escalates when O'Brien invites the couple to his luxurious apartment. Once they arrive, he does something unthinkable to an outer party member. He reaches over and turns his telescreen off. Believing they are safe, Winston and Julia confess their treason. O'Brien welcomes them, initiating the couple into a legendary underground resistance group known as the Brotherhood. O'Brien gives Winston a copy of the Rebel Manifesto. Looking at this map of the globe, the text explains the true nature of their reality. The world is divided into Oceania, Eurasia, and Eastasia, locked in a perpetual stalemate war. This conflict is entirely engineered to consume resources. keeping the global population impoverished and perfectly docile. Winston reads this manifesto to Julia back in their sanctuary above the shop. Suddenly, a cold voice echoes through the room. It's coming from directly behind the picture of St. Clement's Church. The antique room was heavily bugged the entire time. Black-clad troops smash through the window, and Mr. Charrington enters, revealing himself as an active member of the Thought Police. Their sanctuary was a trap from the very beginning. Winston is dragged into the Ministry of Love. It is a windowless fortress composed of bright, sterile cells where the harsh lights are never turned off. He sees the sheer absurdity of party law through his cellmates. A poet named Ampleforth is thrown in alongside him, condemned to die simply because he left the word God at the end of a line while translating a poem by Rudyard Kipling. Then comes the ultimate betrayal. The cell door opens and O'Brien walks in. He is not a rebel savior. He is a top operative of the Ministry of Love, and he has been watching Winston for years. O'Brien oversees Winston's interrogation, explaining the party's true objective. They do not execute their enemies to make martyrs out of them. They torture them until their minds are completely broken and cured of any independent thought. Through agonizing, prolonged physical trauma, O'Brien forces Winston to practice doublethink. Winston must reject the evidence of his own eyes and train his mind to genuinely believe that 2 + 2 = 5. Even as his body deteriorates and his logic shatters, Winston clings to one final internal victory. Deep down, he still hates Big Brother, and he has not yet stopped loving Julia. O'Brien discovers this last sliver of defiance. To eradicate it, he sends Winston to Room 101, a specialized chamber designed to subject a prisoner to their own worst, unspeakable nightmare. For Winston, that nightmare is rats. O'Brien straps him to a chair and clamps a cage full of starving, squirming rats directly against his face. Terrified beyond all reason, Winston finally breaks. He screams out frantically, begging O'Brien to subject Julia to the rats instead of him. Sometime later, a released, entirely hollowed-out Winston sits at a cafe. His mind is now totally compliant, idly tracing party propaganda into the dirt on the table. He recalls a brief run-in he had with Julia after their release. The meeting was cold and repulsive. Without a shred of emotion, they both admitted to utterly betraying one another in Room 101. As news of a military victory blares from the telescreen, Winston looks up at a poster of Big Brother, and he begins to weep with genuine joy. The party has won. The rebellion is dead. The man named Winston Smith has been completely erased.